Hey guys, Shipmac here. I wanted to do a video to go over the autopilot systems on this aircraft. First thing I want to do though is a huge shout out to Hyper Performance Group. Some absolutely amazing things with this aircraft. First off, the looks. You know, you save the whole world, and if you don't look good doing it, nobody's going to remember your name. So it is really hard not to look good in this beautiful aircraft. So they've done an amazing job. But what is absolutely more impressive than that is the fact that they have modeled the systems in this aircraft so well. This is a very, very complex aircraft, and I am mind blown at what they have been able to do with that. So, if for whatever reason you haven't bought this aircraft, I think I'm only going to post this to where you can only see it if you have bought the aircraft. But if you haven't, you absolutely need to. Um, and buy all the upgrades, everything that he's got. Anything he comes out with, buy it, man. This thing's amazing. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple control bindings that I'm going to use in this video. All right, so on my cyclic only, I'm going to come right down here and we're just going to go with trim. All right, so rotor trim reset. I have bound to this button here because that's the closest in my joystick that basically to real life. And then increase rotor lateral, longitudinal and lateral, both up and down. I map to the center coolie hat, fore, aft, right, and left. All right. And then on the, oh boy, you know what? You're going to have to go through the forums and figure out how to, come on now. Why are you not swapping over to my throttle? There it goes. Man, that thing is a pain in the butt. All right, increase propeller fore pitch. That's probably decrease. Yep. And rotor trim right, rotor trim left. So propeller fore pitch small, increase decrease. I have mapped to this little coolie hat right here. It feels pretty close to the real thing as far as the actual coolie hat, but also as far as kind of the way your thumb lays when you're using the collective. So that's what I've used for my mappings on that, and that's really all. The other one that I did forget to talk about is oh my goodness, this user interface is sometimes very frustrating. All right, toggle auto hover. I have bound to this button right here, right in the smack center, and that is pretty close to what you're going to feel in real life. All right, so coming back out, here we have the aircraft right here, and first thing we're going to notice is right here across the autopilot control panel, which is this box right here. These four right here have no indications on them. They use what's called a dead-faced indication. Dead-faced indication meaning that when the lights are off, everything's good. If there's a problem, the light turns on. All right. So everything off here means that everything is on in the system. All right. So just for reference, this MFD4, MFD2, MFD1. MFD4 I have on the VMS, so vehicle management, and then the main page that we're going to be using inside the vehicle management is the system page and the reconfiguration page. Just out of curiosity, no, you can't actually, no, none of that reconfiguration is set up. I didn't expect that. That would be just ridiculous if he had, but was worth a shot. All right, so I'm going to be using the system page, the reconfiguration page to talk about some of the systems, and then the control page so you can kind of see what's going on. Over here, I'm just going to have this up so that you can see when I'm on that, which you're also going to be able to see that from this page, but that's fine. Alright, so on this page, this is your AFCS. These three right here are just letting you know that the computers are telling you that your autopilot control panel, your collective, and your cyclic, all the buttons are all working, the systems are all reporting that everything is working properly and there's no issues with it. Down here, green means the system is armed and in command. Blue means that the system is armed, operational, but in a standby mode. It's a backup. So your fallback is AP1 fails, AP2 takes over, AP2 fails. You go back to backup SAS fails. Good luck, because this thing's really hard to fly without SAS. Over here we have our SEMAs, Smart Electromechanical Actuators. Those are physically located right up here. Is the lateral, 2 each. You have the collective, 1 each, and then the longitudinal over here, and there's 2 of those. They go in alphabetical order, lateral, longitudinal, left to right, so that's the easiest way to remember that. The last 2 right here are back on the tail boom. Alright, and what these are is these are just quick twitch, short throw, very quick twitch actuators that add to and take away from the pilot's control. The pilot is not aware of what they're doing. They do not move the pilot's controls. Alright, these right here are parallel trim actuators. These are electrical motors down in the bottom, 3 across the front of here and 1 kind of back in here somewhere. These will actually move the controls, and this is the 100% authority type, can move the controls as far as they need to in order to affect the autopilot in the way that it needs to. These are for stabilization primarily. These are for autopilot. Autopilot cannot exist without stabilization, so these are a base layer required in order for these to work properly. But these are what's actually going to move the controls and make things happen. Alright, so on the cyclic right here, the red button is the AP SAS cut. That's how you turn stuff off. This right here is the AP SAS recovery. That's how you turn the stuff back on. You can turn it on and off from down here, but this is the way to do it in flight. This is primarily used on ground. This is used in flight. Alright, so at the beginning of every flight, you're supposed to SAS cut 1. I got yellow SAS across the top. The SAS is degraded. I got red autopilot down here. That means autopilot is failed or is no longer working. I got 2 red autopilots here. That confirms my autopilot's failed here. And then my master warning unit, I've got a red AP there letting me know that the autopilot is offline. All 4 of my trim motors are now in red, and that lets me know that the autopilots are no longer controlling the trims. However, the trim motors should still be working. Alright, there's right now, that actually doesn't start happening until you get all the way to SAS off, but right now in backup SAS, which is what we're in, I should still be able to drive fore, aft, left, and right on my cyclic. Alright, pitch, roll, and yaw over here in yellow because again they're degraded. Degraded meaning that they are operating in 50% of their authority. Alright, give me just a second here. My headset is dying. Sorry about that. I had it charged and then I left it on. Alright, back with you. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and SAS AP cut again. That's that red button right here, and we're not worried about the bindings right now because that's outside of the scope of this. But you'll notice right now backup SAS is off. Backup SAS caution up here is letting me know that backup SAS is no longer working, and then SAS is now in red here. Backup is in red there. Pitch, roll, and yaw are in red here. We got these 3 lights out. Alright, that lets me know that I am no longer in any type of stabilized flight. Now, with my coolie hat right here, with that rotor trim lateral and rotor trim longitudinal, I can drive my stick center fore, aft, right, and left. And this is actually part of the pre-flight. Every first flight of the day and every IFR. So you would bust these all the way down, make sure that it comes back, make sure that you have manual beep control, and then you would build them back up. to build them all the way up is forward on that. Left brings up back up in 1. Right brings back up in AP2. Alright. A trim. So if I hit A trim, I knock out all 4 of my trim actuators. But I still have full authority on my SAS. So what the A trim is for is to tell the helicopter, get off my stick, don't touch my stick. It's basically saying don't move my controls. I will handle moving the controls. I still want you to be using the stability augmentation system to dampen out any disturbances, but I don't want you driving the controls anywhere. I'll deal with that by moving the stick. Alright, so I'll bring that back on. Right here we have our beep trim button. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hold that down. You see right here, why in the world am I still showing hands on? This has started to really climb up since this new, there's no way. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I do that. No. Man, that's a lot. That's a lot of dead zone there. I'm not sure what's up with that. Alright, so you'll notice there, trim released. Wow, I gotta move that stick a lot to get hands. Actually, there's my problem. I barely touch it forward, hands on. I deflect it 10 degrees back. I got hands on. Alright, so that may be something that you need to work with. Alright, so when I hold down that trim released, that is in effect, oh, that's weird. Look at that stick jump like that. Alright, when I hold down the trim release, I tell you what, yep, that's still centered. When I hold down trim release, that's basically deactivating these trim motors. It's detaching my controls from these trim motors. And then I can move it all around that I want, and when I let go, it re-engages those trim motors. Alright. So, I'm going to start out in the basic setup to where you have all of your APs online. So everything up here is good to go. I'm going to pick it up to hover, and we're going to start out. Now for me, I fly in a follow-up trim and hover only, because that's how the aircraft actually behaves. So I'm going to pick this thing on up to hover, and then, so if you'll notice, I'm holding down the trim release button. Alright, now wherever I let go of that trim release button, that is where the autopilot is going to hold the nose. If the wind were to blow me off course, then it would, the aircraft would right itself back to that position. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm moving the stick, but ever so slightly, just very, very lightly moving the stick. And as I move the stick, the trim motors are going to drive the center to where the stick is now centered. To where as soon as I let go, the stick is automatically centered. And that's the follow-up trim. So if I push forward the trim motors, I push against the spring, the trim motors are going to drive that spring back to neutral, to where now my stick is centered. And when I do that in basic attitude mode, then wherever I let go of the stick, it is going to reference that nose height and roll and all that stuff. And then the aircraft is going to maintain that. Now, if I hold down trim release, you'll notice the aircraft start to drift a little bit. It's slight roll to the right, because those trim motors are no longer maintaining that. So it's going to hunt around a little bit. That's normal. Alright, so now just for a show, I'm going to come way nose up. I'm going to let go of the trim release. Now that is my new reference attitude. If I come way nose down, that is my new reference attitude. Alright, so let's go ahead and I'm going to let that airspeed pick up. And what I'm looking for is 40 knots, because at 40 knots we're going to go from follow-up trim to basic attitude hold. Alright, and there we're above 40 knots, so we're going to level it out and let go. Alright, now if I were to move the stick without pushing trim release and let go, it is going to come right back. See that? And if I come back, it's going to come back as well. If I come left or right, it's going to come back. And right up here, it's telling me this is my roll axis, this is my pitch axis. These boxes that you see here, it's telling me that I'm overriding the pitch axis. Right there it is. And it's telling me that I have deflected far enough away from the reference pitch that I had originally told the aircraft to keep, that now it's warning me, it's letting me know that I am overriding the system without pushing the force trim release. Alright, so I'm going to push down on the force trim release, and I'm going to nose it over. Alright, now this is my new reference. If something pushes the aircraft off of that reference, then the aircraft will right itself and return to that reference. If I override that reference without the trim release and release, it's going to come right back to it. Alright, now this coolie hat on top changes that trim reference. So if I pull back on the coolie hat, it moves that trim reference up. That attitude reference point is going to come up. If I push it right, the attitude reference point is going to come right. Alright, so let me go ahead and pick up some speed here. Let's get out on the way and we'll start talking about upper modes. Alright, so the first upper mode we're going to talk about is cruise height. If I roll this, we'll see right there on this radar altitude tape, I've got a cruise height of reference of 50 set in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. And now I see the green and white flashing bug letting me know that I'm setting it, processing through the screen. If I continue through the top of the screen, now it's going to tell me where it's at. Alright, I'm going to hold down with the left mouse and click with the right, and that is now going to activate cruise height. For whatever, it syncs it, and I'm going to have to talk to somebody and find out if that's the proper. I didn't think that. I thought it would, whatever bug you put, it would climb to it, but either way. So right here it's saying cruise height is in the collective axis. Alright, so now if I come down here on my collective, I got this beep trim right here, and I've got that mapped. If I push up on that beep trim, I'm moving that cruise height bug up or down, and the aircraft is going to climb or descend to maintain that cruise height reference. Alright, I can also do the same by rotating this. Alright, so I'm going to right click it to turn it off, and now we're going to go indicated airspeed. I'm going to roll the indicated airspeed up. Right now it's below the tape, so you see it right there. It's at 75, so I'm going to bring that up. We're going to say I want to decelerate to 100 knots. I'm going to hold down the left, click the right. I don't want to listen to you. Alright, so now the aircraft is going to nose up because indicated airspeed is in the pitch axis right here. Collective, roll, pitch. So it's going to pitch for speed. In doing so, it climbed because I don't have anything armed to the collective axis, so the collective axis is still my responsibility. Alright, so now that indicated airspeed is armed and in control of the pitch axis, if I rotate this, the aircraft will speed up or slow down, and I use the beep trim in the pitch axis. Forwards speeds up, backwards slows down. That's my coolie hat right there that I mapped. Alright, it's the coolie hat on the cyclic. Alright, the next thing we're going to go to is altitude. Alright, so the first thing I'll do is I'm going to come down here to altitude hold, and I'm just going to click it. That drops a green bug on my altitude tape, and then this aircraft is now going to maintain the altitude, and it's showing me right here it's going to use the collective to do so. Alright, so now if I use this beep trim on the collective, I can beep up and it moves that up, or I can beep down and the aircraft will descend. Alright, now just above that is the altitude acquire, so I'm going to roll that up a little bit above here. Now in altitude acquire, I'm telling it that I want to fly to this altitude and then hold that altitude. So I hold down the left, click right. Now I go into vertical speed mode on the collective, so the collective is going to capture 1,000 foot a minute of climb in the vertical speed. It has armed the altitude acquire on the collective axis right here, and I can see right there that my altitude acquire is 2240. So I'm going to climb at 1,000, should be 1,000 feet a minute. Oh, I don't have indicated airspeed in. Oh, I do. That's weird. Oh, yep, duh. Forget that I said that. Alright, so now altitude has captured, and we are holding altitude. So everything is now good with that. We've switched from altitude acquire there to altitude hold there. Alright, so the next thing we're going to talk about here is vertical speed. We just saw an action, but I'm going to go ahead and turn off altitude hold. And now I'm going to roll. When I roll vertical speed, you'll see right there on the VSI, the vertical speed indicator, you'll see that bug going down. So I want to descend at 500 feet a minute. Hold left, click right. Now vertical speed is armed on the collective. Alrighty. This button now on the collective, because the vertical speed is armed on the collective, this button is now my vertical speed. So if I click that button up, the bug comes up and the vertical speed corresponds. Alright, so I'm going to bring that right about there. Actually, we're going to go back into altitude hold, and now over here we have heading. So I'm going to roll the heading around and you'll see it right there on the HSI. Alright, let me make sure, yep, HSI. And I'm going to bring it to where I want to head back the other way, but in a southerly direction. So I've got my green bug over there, down there, mostly south. Hold down left, click right, and now in the roll axis you see heading. Heading is in yellow because we're a good ways away from where that bug is. So it's letting me know I'm not there, but I'm trying to get to it. 30-degree bank, always 30 degrees, and we're going to come on around. Alright? Now as that heading comes on around, I want you to notice we've got about a 10 knot headwind right now. So on our airspeed, you've got this tan line right there. Alright? This yellow line lets us know what airspeed we're at. What airspeed we're actually at is right along that yellow line. Even though we got the green bug up there, we're actually a little bit slower. Now, this line right here gives me my ground speed. So right now I've got a 10 knot headwind. I'm going about 90 knots. Should be about a 80 knot. You know, we're a little bit less than or actually we're about 86, something like that. So that headwind, it's a little bit better than 10 knots, but whatever. Alright, so the other thing to notice, I'm going to go ahead and now on my cyclic, because I have heading in the roll axis armed up here, now the left right on this will control the bug. So I'm going to hold down left and I'm going to swing this a little more to the east. We're going to come around there, and what I'm looking to do is get a good crosswind going. And the reason that I want to do that is to show, actually that's good enough crosswind there. That's a perfect crosswind. And then I'm going to slow back the aircraft to make this a little more pronounced. Alright, so I was doing that by holding down on this coolie hat to slow the aircraft back. And as the aircraft slows down and we have a 10 knot crosswind, you're going to notice this diamond off to the left here. That's my actual ground track. This is my heading. That heading is based off of these magnetometers, all right, which are talking to these AHRs. So mag 1 talks to AHRs 1, mag 2 talks to AHRs 2. All right, so these two magnetometers are talking, and then I'm receiving this right here. MFD2 is receiving everything from AHRS 2. So this magnetometer right here is being pushed up to MFD2, and that's what's driving this right here, letting me know which direction I'm heading. My Garmin's are telling me which way I'm actually traveling across the ground, and that is being populated right here. So over here we talked about the vertical speed indicator. That comes out of the air data computers here and here, and specifically this one comes from right here. Alright, so now I'm going to come down here to this right here. Alright, this changes me from using my magnetometers and my air data computers to using my Garmin's for these two functions here. So I'm going to swap it, and we're going to see now I have flight path angle and ground track. So ground track is armed, and now we have a green diamond around that diamond that shows our ground track. So now if I said I want to be going due east across the ground, the aircraft is going to figure out what magnetic direction to actually fly me to crab through the air so that my ground track will be due east. Alright? And then over here, instead of vertical speed, I have flight path angle. So I'm going to bring that flight path angle up. I'm going to go ahead and arm it. And we're going to drive this thing up to 5%. So now I'm telling the aircraft I want to climb at a 5% grade. Alright? So for every 1,000 feet across the ground, I want to climb 50 feet. Anybody good at math? That's what this is telling me. Alright, that 5%. Now notice I'm climbing at about 800 feet a minute. If I increase my airspeed, the aircraft is going to maintain the same flight path angle, because that's what I've told it I want to do. And I'm not going to have the power to do that, so let's back off a little bit. Oh, come on, let the power out. There it goes. Alright, and now we're all the way up here at 1,200 feet a minute, whereas before we were at 800. Well, let it settle out. Alright, we're at 1,000. Because if you think about it, if I'm traveling faster across the ground, if I want to maintain the same climb angle, I've got to be climbing at a much faster rate. So that makes sense. And oh no, I've gone into the clouds. Okay, well that actually brings me into my next. So we're going to level off here. I'm going to turn south. And again, I'm using the cyclic beep. I want to turn south, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up my map. We're going to go nearest airport, and we're going to go back to Huntsville Executive. So I've got Huntsville selected. Over here on the right, I'm going to select Direct To, and then Activate. That, just so we can see here, is going to drop me a line back to Huntsville Airport. Alright. There it goes. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and right here, so my Garmin's cannot talk directly to my autopilots. I have to use my MFDs. Alright, there is no cross communication directly between the Garmin's and the autopilots. So the Garmin is going to tell the MFD what to do. These MFDs are extremely sophisticated. Alright, they are a full-blown computer. They have their own graphics processors. Inside of them, they actually have two graphics processors in each one. It's called SnowRunner 1 and SnowRunner 2. I'd really like to talk to the person who came up with that and figure out exactly what they were getting at with that, because I have a theory, but it is not PG. So I'm going to go ahead now. Down here I can select what nav source I'm using. So right now I have FMS, Flight Management System, which is the GPS. I have ILS1 or ILS2. So I'm going to select FMS and I'm going to click couple. Alright, now that's turned green, and instead of track down here, I now have nav on my roll axis. So the nav is going to start rolling around to pick up that airport. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and set up. Now, for whatever reason, we do not have the ability to load procedures. I could have swore this worked. I don't know why we cannot load procedures. If anybody understands uh, why, please let me know, or comment or something. But we can't do that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, where we are going to just load the frequency in. So I'm going to come over here, airport information, frequencies, ILS, and I want to do 36 right. There it is right there, 109.55 there. Now, if I loaded the procedure, it would cross-load into this, but I didn't. So I'm going to manually put it in, 109.55, and I'll go ahead and transfer it in. So there it is, 109.55, and I'm going to come over here to the flight navigation display. Alright, we are in magenta because that is all good there. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and come back over here to flight track mode, and let's take a look on my navigation display. I'm actually tracking pretty good for that. So I am going to, the reason I switched over to that is because if I was still on nav and I swapped over to this, it could do some things I don't want it to do. So this should be on ILS2, and this should be on, this should be on ILS1, and this should be on ILS2. Alright, the reason we do that is so that if this MFD fails, I can immediately couple off of this one. Alright, so this is going to be my primary. This is running off of this. This magenta on both lets me know that I am set up properly. So I'm going to go ahead and couple this. Alright. And, I need to descend. So we are going to descend rather rapidly. Alright, so Localizer 2 is armed. The aircraft has turned to intercept the localizer. A little bit steeper than I would have liked, but I'm a lot closer to the airport than I thought. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Really, really dive out of the air on this one and see if we can catch up to this localizer. Or, I'm sorry, this glide slope. I don't know if we're going to be able to. I did not realize how close to the airport we were. And I'm going to go slow back to give us some time. I think 70 knots is the minimum speed. That was a C2. I'm not sure on a D2. I'll be honest. I would have to look that up. But we're going to go ahead and just bring that on back. And, Yep, I dropped below the minimum required airspeed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to recover this thing, and I'm going to get this thing on. This is really hard to see. dive down below this and arm it. Oh boy, it didn't like that. So I will tell you that is not what you were supposed to do. But now we have glide slope 2 in green there and localizer 2 there. You would do this a lot further out. Don't do what I do. I'm a terrible influence. But I just wanted to show you. And then I'll tell you, I was impressed with this. I was absolutely impressed with this last part here. Hats off to Hype Performance Group, because you'll notice right here when we get to 60 feet, kaboom! Now we go into altitude mode. The aircraft levels off at 60 feet and flies right down the runway. This is absolutely amazing. Alright, so I'm going to switch it from altitude mode to cruise height mode, and the reason I'm going to do that is because we're going to do a whoa boy, and we're going to go into ground trajectory command hover mode, or ground trajectory control, depending on who you talk to and what you read. At the helionics course, they called it ground trajectory command. Alright, and here I'm going to switch over to my hover, and it's going to show me right there is my hover spot, and I'm going to get my feet off the pedals, because you're not supposed to have your feet on the pedals in GTCH. Oh, overshot that just a little bit, so coming back to it, GTCH is yellow because we're not quite where we want to be. It'll turn green here in a second, and that should be green, but it is not. That's interesting. Alright, so ground trajectory command hover mode, or control hover mode, is going to hold a GPS based hover within 1 meter. Now on my cyclic right here, if I beep right, I'm going to move 1 meter to the right. If I beep left, I'm going to move 1 meter to the left. If I beep forward, I'll move 1 meter forward. If I beep back, I'll move 1 meter back. If I hold down the button, I'm going to move at it's 5, but I don't know what the units are. Feet per second, feet per, I don't know. You know what, forget I mentioned it. It's going to move a slow speed across the ground, and I have let go and it is still moving, so I'm not sure. There it goes. Looks like it's coming to a hover now. What you're doing is you're moving that dot right there. Alright, so same thing for left and right. If you hold it down, it'll move left a little bit. Alright, if I go feet on the pedals and I turn the aircraft, hey, now we're green. Alright, it is going to now pick up that new heading. Also, if I come down here left and right on my beep trim on the collective, I can process the aircraft, and it is going to maintain that spot. So very, very, very well done. Looks amazing. The last thing we're going to talk about is ground trajectory command mode, so just GTC. Alright, I'm going to hold down my trim release, and you'll see right there my GTCH starts blinking. I'm going to move the aircraft slightly and let go. That's going to snap a new point. Alright, and now the aircraft is going to come to a hover in that new point where I let go of that. Now I'm going to hold that same button down. I'm going to start coming forward, and watch what happens as soon as I hit 20 knots. At exactly 20 knots, it's going to shift from ground trajectory command hover to GTC mode, ground trajectory command mode. Alright, now I'm going to let go. Wherever I let go, it's going to maintain that speed and track across the ground. GPS speed across the ground and GPS track across the ground. Alright? Now, I can change that track by either beeping my collective, and I'm going to come up a little bit. No, okay. I'll cover autopilot fly up in a minute. So I can beep right or left. No, I didn't tell you to climb. I told you to yaw. Alright? So, or with my cyclic, my beep, I can move that right or left. Now, realistically, when I hit 40 knots, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to come out of GTC mode. Alright. So as I can fly out of trim by using my cyclic. Oh, it's going into autopilot fly up because there's stuff under me. I tell you what, let's just get above 200 feet, and we won't have to deal with that anymore. Right, no, why do you keep? There we go. All right, we're above 200 feet now. We won't have autopilot fly up. All right, so essentially what I'm doing with this is with my cyclic coolie hat, I can speed up and slow down my ground-based speed. So I'm pulling back on the coolie hat now, just clicking it back, and it's slowing down or speeding up. I believe 10 knots across the ground is the slowest that it should go. It automatically engages at 20, but it will go 10. All right. And then with my collective, I can change the direction that my nose is facing. All right. So last thing to talk about here is this button right here. It's the autopilot upper mode off. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and now we've gone all the way back to basic attitude hold mode. All right. Let me go ahead and pick up that airspeed a little bit there so that we can get back. All right, basic attitude hold, which is what we started out with. And down here, I'm going to switch this back over. Let's go sector mode. Check range. Alright, so I'm going to start heading back to the airport over here. Alright, autopilot fly up is when you have cruise height engaged and you are either, so there's two different scenarios. You can be 230 feet. You can have the radio set for over 230 feet and pass below 200 feet, or you can have it set for 200 feet or below and end up 30 feet less. All right. So the autopilot goes into fly up, which it just starts climbing like crazy. All right, and I think that's about it for the autopilot systems on this aircraft. If anybody has any questions, again, please feel free, and I will answer them as best as possible. But for now, we're going to come in here and we're going to do a big old whoa boy there at the end. And then I'm going to set this down and we're going to look at posting this video. So here's your whoa boy. Don't drag that tail. That thing is expensive. Ask me how I know. Whoop, whoop, that won't do.